sort of the tools we'll need is Cursor and GitHub, and then sort of the key concepts we're touching on are vibe coding and Git and GitHub. Cool. So 30-second summary here. We're building a mini Spotify with Cursor, ready to build something real with AI. In this kickoff project for our AI Workspace series, you'll use Cursor to create a mini Spotify web app from setup to your first working feature. Learning to use AI tools like Cursor is no longer optional. Whether you're a full stack developer, front-end developer, software engineer, or just love vibe coding, this hands-on build will show you how to automate repetitive work and focus on creative problem solving. Right, let's get started. So these are some of the topics we'll be going into. Setting up Cursor, so that's the IDE we're using with AI built in. Using Cursor to create a high-level plan, debugging an error, creating a brand new feature from scratch. That'll be the queue feature. Automating workflow with custom commands and rules, and then setting up a cursorignore file to ignore things we don't want in the context. So I'll be going through the low touch mode. Later on, there'll be someone else going through the high touch mode. Cool. Before we start step one, we'll go in step 0. We'll touch on a summary of the content here. So in this project, we'll be working on NextSound, a mini Spotify-like web application. We'll use the AI-powered Cursor IDE to explore the existing code, add a brand new queue feature, and give it a visual refresh. By then, we'll have plenty of hands-on experience using Cursor, which I think is super useful. What is Cursor? Cursor is an IDE built in based on the popular VS Code, but with a powerful AI backend that allows you to chat with your code in plain English and solve bugs and do all sorts of cool stuff. And if you're not familiar with what an IDE is an integrated development environment. It's sort of like you've got Word and you've got like Notepad. It's the sort of, it allows programmers to more directly interface with code and a bunch of sort of nice to haves that like a word processor that's built for word processing and text development like Word or Google Docs say is to a normal text editor like Notepad, say, or a bare bones text editor like Notepad. Cool. What are we here to do today? In this project, I will demonstrate ... I'm doing this project to learn. So I will demonstrate using Cursor, or we go AI code. I'm doing this project to learn Cursor. Cool. So in this first step, we'll be setting up Cursor, installing it, cloning the repo, and creating a Cursor account if you don't already have one. So let's get into it. Okay, so in this step, I'm going to install Cursor, clone the NextSound sound repo from GitHub and create a Cursor account to chat with. So I've just said in this step, I'm going to install Cursor, clone the NextSound repo from GitHub, and create a Cursor account to chat with the AI to design a feature. I suppose I can say, yeah, design a feature that works. Cool. So I'm on Windows at the moment. There's a Mac stream and a Windows stream. I'll be following the Windows stream. They are very similar, but there's good walkthrough steps for both. So download and install Cursor from cursor.com/downloads. I'll hit there. And while we wait for that to download, I can sort of speak about how is Cursor different from other AI coding tools. So most AI coding tools fall in two categories: plugins for existing editors like GitHub Copilot or Ada, or even sort of early iterations of Claude Code and similar CLI tools, or command line tools. Plugins are great for quick code suggestions, but they often are very limited to what file you're working on, and they're very powerful for scripting, but lack of a visual interface, and that makes it quite difficult for beginners to pick up them. Cursor stands out because it's a fully integrated AI IDE. It can handle complex tasks like multi-file refactoring and project-wide feature planning. Plus, it's designed to be easy to use, like I mentioned before, with features that help automate your workflow and enforce coding standards. Cool, so this download's just finished, so I'm just gonna open this. I might fill this out once while waiting for it to install. Cool, so I'm just gonna click through this, following the prompts. Cool, and while this installs, we can go and answer this question here. What is the main difference between a standard IDE like VS Code and Cursor? The main difference is that Cursor ... while a standard IDE ... So the main difference, as I spoke on before, is the direct AI integration that is, that's natively supported with Cursor. It's built around. So that's it all right here. The main difference is that Cursor natively supports AI integration, while a standard IDE doesn't. IDE VS Code. Awesome. Create and log in to your Cursor account. Follow the prompts to sign up and log in via your browser. Verify your email. Authorize Cursor to log into the desktop app. Cool. So this is almost finished now. I will be creating a new account, even though I've used Cursor before, but I've set this up to sort of work from the very beginning of someone that's not worked on Cursor before. I really think it's an awesome tool that allows a lot of skills that are being effectively, to some degree, less reliant on for a lot of companies. So I think this is really, really cool. Awesome. So we've got the opportunity to launch Cursor here. So I'll just do that. Wait a couple of seconds for it to open up, then we can go create an account. I'm just reading the chat. To comment, it is live, as the NextWork account pointed out. Hello, Maximus. Okay, cool. Cursor's just launched here, so what I'll do is I'll bring it up onto the other screen. Oh, that's very annoying. Interesting. Let's see if I can. There's no click and drag on it, so I've got to do that. I can't click and move it around. Hi, Maximus. Maximus, the gladiator of NextWork. Yes. Gladiator of NextWork, indeed. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sign up with a new account. Currently logged in as, please only log in if you came from the Cursor app. No, I don't want to log in. Okay. I wonder if I can paste this into a different browser and get. Okay. Just check. I don't have a Cursor account in this email, and then I will go ahead with that. Okay, I think I might have a Cursor account on this. Okay. All right. So creating a Cursor account. just had to get a fresh Google account through this because I already have one on my NextWork account. I'll try and pull back to chat. Cool. Okay. There you go. So I'll jump back to having both of these open if I can. I can't move that around yet. Cool. Skip and continue. I'll just choose the basic dark mode. This is just giving us a rundown. We'll go through shortly and turn this off, data sharing. It's in much more detail on the high touch mode. So if you're struggling with exact steps, that'll be a good place to look. Cool, so I'll open this up instead of a dual window setup here. Let's have a look. Create and log into your Cursor account, follow the prompts to sign up and log in via your browser, verify your email and authorize Cursor to log into the desktop app. Cool, so this is asking us to take a screenshot of the Cursor welcome screen. Look, yeah, I'm wondering if that's this page or the one before it, but I think it's this one. Cool, so I just uploaded an image of the Cursor welcome screen there. I'm just going to move down to clone the repo now. Cool. So this is the NextSound repo that's set up so you can have a starting point for a web app, which I think is really cool. Okay, so we're going to clone repo, copy that, paste it in there, and we'll choose my desktop. Yeah, and I suppose this is a good time to look into what is Git and what is GitHub. Yes, we'd like to open that. So think of Git as a sort of a time machine for your code. It's a version control system that tracks every change you make. So you can rewind to previous versions or do all sorts of cool commands. And it's a really good tool to use in big teams to manage code and who's working on what. And that's what a repository is, a space for code that multiple people can access, or just by yourself, for sure. Hello, Hack&/Pro. Thanks for joining the NextWork live stream. We're just working through the AI Workspace Cursor project number 1. Cool. Okay, so we've cloned the repo here. We can see all the files. We can see the chat on the right-hand side. Cool. Let's ask it a question. So I ought to explain the chat will have different amounts of context depending on what you give it. But this, in this case, has the repo for context. So yeah, we'll touch on this in a second, this next step around privacy, which I brought up when we were installing it. We'll ask that question, and while that renders, we can go here and it's a little bigger so we can see it. Cool. So as you guys remember, when I was opening up this installation for Cursor, I ticked share data because I had to, but it's really good idea to turn it off. So you can go here into settings, general, and turn it into privacy mode, and that makes that, we'll get through that file sharing that you ticked at the start. Yeah, that's what this is suggesting here. Cool. Step 2, run and explore the NextSound web app. So let's use Cursor to understand the NextSound code base and get an application running locally. In this step, we're going to use Cursor to understand the app and run NextSound locally. So in this step, I'm going to use Cursor to understand the app. Locally. Because maybe I can change this a little bit and say, understand the app because I want to make changes and add a new feature. So I've said, what do we do in this step? In this step, I'm going to run the web app and use cursor to understand the app because I want to make changes and add a new feature. Cool, so you can see it's responded here, explain the web app to me. And yeah, we can touch on some of the stuff about, what is cursor chat? How does it understand the project? And an extra question here, what's its knowledge base? How familiar is it with other content that's outside of your repo? Cool, so what is cursor chat? Cursor chat is a conversational coding partner. You can ask questions about your code, tell it to write new code, or even fix a bug. It's aware of your entire project. So it can give you highly relevant context-aware answers, which are really useful, especially when you're working in big code bases, not just a single file, because often errors can spread out for more than just an individual file. So how does it understand my project? It reads and analyzes files in the NextSound repo to build and understand how everything fits together. This is called indexing. When you ask a question, it uses an index to find the most relevant piece of code and provide an accurate explanation. It's like it has a mental map of your entire code base. It definitely does. I can't get across how useful it is being able to use this in projects like a web application or even more complex stuff. And definitely you can talk to Cursor about more than just what's in the repo. If I was to ask it, say, I don't know, what is the capital of France? It would be able to give you a really good answer on that. It's not limited at all to what's in your code base. It's a large language model that has a pretty unlimited range. Hello, Network. Can you please zoom in for the cursor window? Zoom in for the cursor window. I can, yep. I zoomed in a little bit there. Let me know if that isn't enough of a zoom in. I'm happy to do more. And thanks for joining, Cloud. Let me know if you need anything else. Thanks. All good, my friend. So the next thing is to read through what Cursor suggested was in the web app. I'm not going to read through everything. I'll just touch on generally what it does. It's a music discovery app. Lets users browse tracks, albums, and artists. It works in two modes, demo and live mode. Demo shows curated chart-topping songs, and live mode provides real-time access to Spotify's music catalog with search functionality. Cool. We can see some of the organization around the front-end file structure there, and the back-end, which is just a file. And there's a list of key features here, and then the tech stack. Super useful if you are unfamiliar with the code base. I think it's a really good place to start. Cool. So we can just write that in this box here. The application is a music app designed to, we can look back up here, designed to let users browse tracks, albums, and artists. Cool. Cool. So running the NextSound app, open integrated terminal. There's a shortcut there, and there's also you can go into these three ellipses here and run terminal, new terminal. I'm just going to shorten this a little bit here so we can see some more of the terminal. And if we run npm run dev now, you'll see it fails because we haven't installed the, and we'll touch on what npm means in a second, but it's a node package manager, and it just holds all the front-end, back-end packages, or front-end packages that are required to run the web app and get it to look the way you've designed it to. So that's stuff like Tailwind and Vite, which is what you see failing here. So what we'll do, and while we wait for this to install, we will read out some of these things here. So why do the commands fail? They just touched on there's packages or dependencies which won't install, which npm install runs and installs. npm is a node package manager. It's a tool that comes with Node.js, a really popular web app framework, super common, and it's really good for web apps. It's got heaps of common tools that interface really well with like just about everything that you could want for a web app, and you can see it's installed there. You can touch on Extra for Expert. So node modules is the file which the packages get installed to. You can see that up here. And so it's generally the biggest file by a long shot, and you'll see that it won't get committed to, like, it'll be auto put in your git ignore. If you're unfamiliar with git ignorers, it's just a file you can list other files in that will want to get pushed to a repo that it's simply too much. It's too large of a file to make it worth, and it's very easy to replicate if someone was to pull your code and then do that. So that's the file there, and you can see all these packages which are required, specified in the package.json file here. Cool. So now we can run npm run dev, and we'll be able to see the web app start, and that's gonna pop on localhost. And so what localhost is it's just a host name for your local computer, and you can in the network you can connect to it, and it's not like live. For instance, if anyone here tried to go into localhost 5173 in the stream, they would run into an issue where it's they don't have the web app running on their own computer, so it wouldn't open up. So what we can do is just copy and paste this into our browser. You can see it was from here as well. You can shift click, I suppose we can do that. Take a second to load all the packages initially. And you can see here, make this a little smaller. You can see here the web app is running. It's in dark mode at the moment. We can swap between those using this. And you can see no API mode is flashing there. That means there's no Spotify API connected. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Cool. Okay, so I've touched on localhost a little bit, but I can go into more detail on no API mode. I sort of did. It's just the fact that there's no API connected. An API is an interface with an application that allows. So you've got like Spotify, and you've got something we're making, which is a web app, and we can interact with Spotify in ways that they allow us to with an API. And there's APIs for all sorts of big public companies and all sorts of smaller things as well. And that you'll find you're definitely going to use those a lot when you're working with something like Cursor, if you're developing anything which is going to be like used in the real world. And you can work with heaps of popular ones for AI, like OpenAI's API, Fast API, that are really good for that. So it's good to understand that. So why none of the tracks playing yet? The app is using fake mock data. It's just showing the information on the page, not like directly tied to something. So we'll take a screenshot of the app running, and we can upload that to this NextWork project. Cool. Awesome. All right. So we're just moving on to creating a new feature now. Just gonna check the chat. There's nothing else I've missed. Cool. So creating a new feature, in this step, we're going to plan a new feature with Cursor, implement the feature, and troubleshoot, iterate if it doesn't work out. In this feature, I'm going to plan and implement a new feature. I will also exercise. Also be debugging. Go to a feature because the feature might not work. So I've said, for what are we doing in this step? I've said in this step, I'm going to plan and implement a new feature. I will also be debugging because the feature I implement might not work. And that's a really good thing that Cursor allows you to do. I would say you probably spend more time debugging than you do actually writing code with, well, just full stop. And then the Cursor is a really good way to sort of lessen that problem. Cool, so we've got a prompt here for planning a queue feature. And we're going to start in agent mode and just run this and get a good plan from Cursor, which is a really, really good thing to do. I'll touch on that while we're waiting for the response. Cool, so I've just pasted that into the chat here, and it's going to go and create a plan. And while we do that, we can touch on why planning is important with, I mean, it's important full stop, but why is it important for large language models, especially like Cursor? And so I'll read out the explanation here. Asking Cursor to create a plan first is like asking a builder for a blueprint before they start construction. It allows you to review the proposed plan changes, and catch any potential issues and make sure Cursor's approach aligns with your vision before it writes a single line of code. You can even suggest changes to the plan before Cursor starts coding. And just to add to that, it's really good to be able to comment back with the large language model in Cursor or anywhere really, and say, like, just make sure it's following along with what it suggested. So definitely would recommend that for using a tool like this to implement changes or even solve bugs or do anything really. Cool. So like noted here, we are going to tell Cursor to implement the suggested plan. And so what it's going to do is it's going to go through our entire code base, and it's going to make the appropriate file changes based on what it suggested up here in the plan. And ideally, there won't be issues, but more than likely, and this project sort of been designed so that you can come to a conclusion of like, oh, this is not a flawless magic box. There is issues that come with it, and you can't just throw anything at it. You have to spend some time debugging, using it, and manually too. But what we'll exercise potentially soon, depending on how it implements this feature, is debugging with Cursor, which is I would argue just about more useful than implementing features with it, because it's able to spot small details and patterns and anything that's relevant during debugging, and adding things like print statements and all that, and just giving advice around how we want to go about solving an issue, or just recognizing issues and formatting, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so while we wait for this to build, I might try out a new feature which is on Nextwork, being deployed recently, and that's called the Ask feature. And what it allows you to do effectively is query information around the project. So in this case, I can ask it, see how close it is to getting done. Yeah, cool. So I can ask it a similar thing. I just to to exercise. I think it's almost there now. Cool. Why is planning important when using the right code? Cool, and it's going to think and review the context of this project, and yeah, it's going to give me a good answer. So I think this is almost done. Cool. Yeah, and you can see it picks up the fact that we're in this project, and it's not just this project, it's all projects on Nextwork, and it suggests directly to step 3, which is what we're speaking about, and it says check that question. So that's really cool, and it's done a really good job bringing that up. Okay, cool, ready to use. Not quite, I'm pretty sure there's a bug, but that's exactly what we're here to do, figure out stuff like that. So I will just refresh the app. Okay, let's see if we can, I might just zoom out a little bit so I can see the entire error. Not that much. Actually, yes, that much. Cool, so actually we can touch back here, see if there's, so that's planning. Why is planning important? Implement it. And yeah, here we go. Read this out. Why is that cursor editing my files right now? Because we're in agent mode, cursor can directly edit your files, create new ones, and even run commands. It's actively working on your code base to follow the plan you created. In contrast, ask mode is more for questions and analysis. In ask mode, it can only read your code and suggest changes but can't modify any files. Super, super useful. What is a new feature? I'm building a queue feature by prompting the AI to design and to plan and carry out design for the feature. Cool. Once cursor finishes, check the new queue feature in your running web app. Cool. Okay. So as we spoke on before, you can sort of see there's an error here, and that's expected. Naturally, using large language models to implement features comes with bugs. So we're going to try go through and iterate and solve the issue here. So you've sort of got different approaches you can apply here. So going through fixing errors directly, which is like asking cursor to just like copy and paste an error, for instance. Refining with a detailed plan. That's a really good idea. Starting from scratch again, but just going and giving it a more detailed plan of exactly how you want to implement like a feature with if you specified files and changes and versions and all that sort of thing, then I think that could be a really good option. So this is quite similar to fix errors. The tab there providing screenshots is sort of the layer further on from that, where you're going and giving it more context or a different type of context that potentially could be more useful for troubleshooting the issue. And here are some steps for why you want to use an image in a prompt. So it says it pictures with 1,000 words, especially in coding. By providing a screenshot, you're giving cursor visual context of a bug. It can see the problem, which helps it identify relevant HTML elements and CSS styles much more accurately than if you describe them in text. I totally agree with that. What is multimodal AI? So that's used in this case. This feature is an example of multimodal AI, which means cursor can understand and process different types of information like text, images. Another example, video, for instance. At the same time, this makes it incredibly powerful for tasks like debugging. So that's how to take a screenshot. Talking about iterative feedback. How can I give better feedback to cursor? I'll touch on both of these, but what I'm going to go through with is the fixing errors with provided screenshots. I suppose it depends on where we go. So why is iterative feedback important? Working with a coding assistant is like having a conversation. That first answer isn't always the final one. By providing clear, specific feedback on what's still wrong, you're guiding cursor towards the correct solution. So this sort of collaborative, iterative process is what makes this a tool like Cursor so powerful. How can I give better feedback to Cursor? Be specific. Instead of saying it's broken, explain how it's broken, what broke, that sort of thing. Point to the part of the UI, be really specific, give screenshots as well, like we've noted. Cool, so we'll touch on this question after we've had a go at troubleshooting this issue. And I'll troubleshoot it with Cursor rather than just diving into the code base. I think that's a really important, relevant skill. Awesome, nice tips. Thank you, Natasha. Okay. So, yeah, I will give it, I can switch this a little bit. Give it information here. Copy it. I'm running into an error when I run npm run dev. So I'll copy and paste the error there. Yeah, we'll see if it's going to have a easy time fixing this or not. And depending, maybe we can get the opportunity to give it screenshots later on if the feature doesn't work as intended. And the sort of a good result for this is, well, a good situation to be in is this being a TypeScript code base. So large language models have spent a lot of time looking at TypeScript, so it can pretty quickly identify errors here. So we'll take its word for it and give it a go, and we can have a look whether the error has changed at all or whether it solved it. Okay, so one problem, there was 3 before, so that's at least a good start. Okay, so use theme was defined but never used, sure. So it's just going to go into like it did before. I'll close this and then copy it. And see if it can have a another attempt at that, because it did solve some issues then. There you go, there's something else. Fingers crossed. Yeah, for sure. So I'm just waiting for this to load, see if I can get any sort of response at all. Doesn't look like it. Interesting. Okay, we can exercise the screenshot thing, I suppose, but I wonder if it's... Yeah, so this is sort of a slightly more hidden error that's not popping up immediately in the console because of the way the code's configured. Potentially somewhere I'd lead to here if I wasn't quite as time constrained was I would ask for like print statements and that sort of thing to be put into the browser console or the backend console. But in this case, I figured there would be something there because there's not an error anywhere else. So I can give it some information around what's actually happening here. So running npm run dev no longer runs into the issue of, or into any direct errors, but the NextSound app is just a white page, just a blank page. The browser console, I can see an error. And if it's any use, if you're running into a similar issue here, you can, where you're not seeing any sort of response from the web app, you can go in and click inspect into console, and you can see responses from what's, from stuff that is hidden or like pushed to only that part of the console. Cool, so I'm just waiting for it to load. Cool, okay, so it's loaded now. There's no no direct errors at the moment. I think, I would presume this would be the queue feature. There's nothing on like the header or anything that I can see called queue. So I imagine this will, okay, doesn't do anything yet. Maybe we can again check the browser console if there was any sort of, click plus, add to queue, clicked. So this is actually quite good. What Cursor's done, or the large language model behind it, has gone and added tracks here, like, so we can see what's being added in debug mode, but obviously there's no like direct preview for a queue yet. Like we can see that these things are being added. So what I'll do now is I'll share this with Cursor, and I'll explain the fact that we can see stuff coming in the web console, but we're unable to see any, like I as the user, I would expect to see like something labeled queue, which would show me what is in my queue at the moment. So I'll just write what I've set up to Cursor, and hopefully it's going to be able to give us some more information. All right, that worked. Currently, the queue feature only adds tracks. Queue feature currently clicking the plus icon on a song adds it to the sends a message to the front end console, which, just give it the exact message here. But the user has no indicator of this, of what their queue actually is. Can we try add UI to show off their current queue? Cool, so hopefully what it's going to do now is it's going to take this information that I've given it around the error messages here, or the sort of logging messages, and it's going to go and add some sort of UI we can look at that's going to indicate to the user that, oh, these are the tracks that are in our queue at the moment. Cool, okay, there you go. There's some, what's popped up for a second. There we go. Okay, cool. We can see stuff from the queue here, and remove stuff from the queue. So that's sort of a good example of going in and trying to create a feature and it not working so well, and going to iterate with logs directly from the backend console, and then understanding that the lack of logs in the backend console meant that there was nothing from the the logs were sort of hidden in the front end, and giving Cursor that information, as well as the fact that the user was lacking, there was a lack of UI to indicate to the user what was in their queue. We were able to build a queue feature. So what I'll do now is I'll take a screenshot of this queue working, and then I'll head back to the Network app and show that off in the screenshot. So I can just add a couple songs here. Queue. So working queue feature. Cool. Okay, so step 4 now, we're just going to touch on sort of a productivity aspect of Cursor. I think this is a really, this can be taken like really far to some pretty advanced stuff with, if you're working in really big code bases and you need to work in, a certain quality of code is what's going to be in the repo. And this happens like, these sorts of things get applied in some ways to sort of autonomously, that can work really well for that. But in this case, this obviously isn't going to be like a really big project, but it's just an example of where you can sort of define a lot of these things that you might find yourself doing quite a bit, whether that's updating documentation or writing CI/CD stuff or writing test cases. Whenever you add something, you're going to, for at least for a rule, you can automate that to happen every time, or for a command, you can do /update docs or /CI/CD, and that'll go and fill out information as you specify in a pre-written prompt. So I'm going to sort of summarize that quite a bit in this. What are we doing in this step? Creating a reusable command and defining rules to customize Cursor's behavior. So this step I am going to set up automated, I can say reusable commands and define rules to customize Cursor's behavior. Cool. All right, so how this works, you set up sort of a directory where you have your rules as well as your commands, and then Cursor will understand that because it's called it's a .cursor file, and it's going to look for commands and rules in there, and you won't have to do any other sort of setup. You just create a directory with specific names, and you can write in here. So what I'm going to do is I'll create a folder called .cursor. Cursor. And what I'll do is I'll create a command subfolder of that. And we're going to create a update docs command. So update docs.md. So MD is a markdown file. That's just a pretty common text file. You can have sort of styling, like different size text and all that sort of thing. Cool. So I'm just going to copy and paste this update docs prompt in there. And what that's going to do is it's going to, when we do /update docs in a minute, you'll see that'll go and create a, it'll go and it will follow this prompt rather than you having to type it out each time, which is super useful. So I can touch on what does this prompt do. This prompt turns Cursor into a technical writer. It tells Cursor to read and understand the project, identify all its features, rewrite the features, and how to run sections of the README to be more accurate to the current codebase, and then fix any broken or old links. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I will expand this a little bit. Keep that chat. So I'm going to open a new chat by clicking the plus icon there, and then I'm going to add update docs here. And we'll give it a minute, but what it's going to go through and do is, well, as this prompt specified, update the README. So while it does that, I can talk about some real-world use cases for commands. So you can create commands to do really anything. So like I touched on before, adding tests or refactoring or deployment prep. So that would be like CI/CD stuff, or adding tests. It's a really good idea to keep commands focused on a single task. So rather than like improve my code base, you would say like maybe, well, you probably wouldn't do that as a command or a rule really, but you would like trying to keep it as a single action. So yeah, just finding one thing to do in a test, like in this case, updating documentation or adding tests. Cool. And then this next point, sort of more for the user, I would argue the adding tests thing, like making sure you're really proper with how you name stuff, so it's not confusing for other people using it, and yourself. You add a lot of commands, and also running detailed prompts for sure. So take a screenshot of your command setup. It should show the .cursor commands, update docs file in the chat window running the update docs command. Cool. Okay. So I'll just take a screenshot of cursor and then save and upload that. Update docs. Cool. What is a command in cursor and what is it used for? So a command in cursor is a predefined prompt that is set up in a specific directory, .cursor / commands. I think it's / commands, not / command. Yeah, / commands that will allow you to quickly execute this prompt. Cool. Give an example of a repetitive task you automate with a custom command. A repetitive task that a cursor command could be used to automate is setting up test for a new feature. Web app works fine. So for instance, if we're adding a queue, like we are in this case, to a music app, and we wanted to, like check stuff works before we pushed it to a public domain, then we could use something like /add tests if we specified it in the .cursor / commands directory, that could then go and write tests, which we would then run afterwards to check before we push it to main whether it meets a certain spec of requirements. So that could be like security checks, or it could be like speed tests, or a whole lot of different things. Cool. So what we're going to go into now is cursor rules. So they're a little bit different. They are things that will be always applied for. Hello, Joel, my friend. Rules are always applied to cursor prompts. So when you're talking to to it at all times. When you ask it to do something, there will be they will always be involved. They're not like they're not they don't get triggered by any sort of like specific prompt you're going to give it, like a /update docs or whatever. For instance, you can move update docs to a rule, but that would be every single time it would get applied, which is likely unnecessary. So what I'm going to do is I'll create a new folder called rules. And just delete rules. Okay, cool. Extra for expert. So there's a pretty good directory here which has all sorts of different cursor rules other people have come up with, and they're really good. And so what are .mdc files? They're markdown files for cursor. They're super useful for they're super useful for cursor, not for us, and understanding, okay, this is a cursor file. It's this specific format. So the rule we're going to set up is the fact that it's going to say howdy each time we talk to it. Obviously, this is just a demo. It's not like, I mean, you could set this up if you really wanted to, but there's much more useful things you can set up for cursor. So I'll just copy this. Well, for cursor rules, sorry. Cool. Okay, so I'll touch on as well this sort of always apply and the different ranges of that. So if you're, like I was speaking on before, there's the always apply setting, which we'll tick for this just to give the example, but there's different forms, so applying intelligently, specific files, and manually when mentioned. And I think those are pretty self-explanatory, but always applies will happen to each prompt. Intelligently will let the agent decide whether it thinks it's a good idea to apply. And then to specific files, say if you updated docs every time or updated a specific backend file every time we call update docs, then you could set that up to do that. Cool. Okay, so we're going to save this file and we're going to test it out. So create a new ask chat and ask based on the description of this web app, and at readme recommend me some cursor rules. Please be concise. So I'll open new chat. And I'll paste that in there. So you can see there, once it's finished, I'll scroll up. It said howdy, which is what the this cursor rule was set up to do. Can you make these rules globally applicable, i.e. not redefining for every project? No, unless you're having something for, unless you're working in the same repo for different projects, which I think is probably pretty silly. I don't think you can do it. No, you can't do that. You can't set up a dot cursor for like a global, for instance. I think potentially a solution to that from my perspective would be having a separate repo which has all of these like cursor rules and cursor commands that you were really interested in, and you could clone that as a sub repo of whatever project you're working on, and then that would be something that would just become a part of all of your projects, for instance. So yeah, that's my answer to that. Unfortunately, cursor doesn't, as far as I understand, doesn't support a like a global set of rules or global set of commands. But yeah, I would solve it that way. Thanks for the question, Joel. Good idea. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, it started with howdy, which is what we expected. Create a new file called colors.mdc. Inside the rules folder, add the following content to colors.mdc. So sure, I can create another one. Colors.mdc. Cool. So I'll just copy and paste that in. Add the following content to colors.mdc. So I'll just create take a screenshot of this, upload it to the next work page. Colors MDC. Desktop. Oh, I did. Cool. So I've uploaded that file now. And so now we're going to use this rule, which is set to always apply just for this demonstration. You probably wouldn't want to do this every time you run a command. You'd probably, you'd probably set this up as something else. But in this case, it's a good demonstration. So I'm going to copy that prompt. So plan a brand color refresh for this web app. And it's going to use the fact that it's got all this information about what sort of colors we want to be on this web app. Yeah, so it's going to go through and apply these things, and obviously it's getting context directly from this file, opposed to just coming up with a new idea. Because in our prompt we didn't actually specify what sort of color refresh we were really looking for, but in this case we are looking for this what's set up in the colors MDC file. So this will slowly, well, probably quite quickly actually, churn away and come up with some edits and changes here. Cool. Okay. Well, it seems to have. It suggests we give this new trial a go, so we can restart the build and let's see if it's had to go. Maybe we can exercise some screenshots if it hasn't. Okay, here we go. There's some error messages. I'll just send this off. As you can see, it looks the same, so I would presume it hasn't quite worked. So I'll just specify can we check that the theme was applied? I'm getting this warning. Oh. Sorry, I upped out of the chat I was in. Just check the inspect elements. Anything that's interesting in here that potentially is. Let's have a look, see if that affects anything. See if there's anything else here. Okay, well, I mean, unless there's a yeah, it looks like it might have applied them. I think they're quite subtle, to be honest. So I'm not sure it's done. We can ask it to, can you exaggerate the color changes for demonstration demo purposes? But we'll come back to that in a second. What is a rule in cursor and what is it used for? A rule in cursor is used for applying a prompt to a specific prompt to a message, and you can vary, like we touched on here, how often you want whatever, like colors in this case we did always, but however you want it to, often you want it to be triggered. So a rule in cursor is used for setting up when to apply specific rules, which is effectively a specific prompt, after, or rule in cursor is used for setting up when to apply specific rules, or to apply a specific prompt to after a message. It can be set up. It can set up to always apply. Apply intelligently, is that what it says? Apply intelligently. Or manually for specific files. Cool. When would you apply manually versus apply for a rule? I would choose apply. I would choose always apply for critical standards like security checks, and always and apply manually for less, say, safety critical changes. Cool. See if I've updated that or not. All right, cool. So while that was away, you can see some changes here to the little interface there. Yeah, so you can see it's gone through the colors.mdc and gone and tried its best to match the color scheme we've given it in the rule. Cool. So we can jump into the next work, secret mission now. This is for pro members. NextSound will be the office's new internal music player, I hope. Maybe. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. So managing context with cursorignore. Your mission should be, should you choose to accept it, is to optimize cursor performance and control what it sees by using a cursorignore file. This is a crucial skill for working efficiently and securely with cursor on larger projects. +1. Cool. So in the secret mission, we're going to create a .cursorignore file and verify that the context is being managed correctly. So in the secret mission, I will learn to control cursor's context by using a .ignore file to ignore directories or files. Cool. So understanding code-based indexing for Cursor to understand your project. It creates an index of your files. However, indexing everything can be inefficient, and let's learn how to manage this. So we're going to open Cursor settings and navigate to the indexing and docs section. So the settings up here on the top right. I wonder if I can close this chat. It's a little bigger. Cool. Okay, so indexing and docs. And we can see here, we've indexed 100% of our code base, so 101 files. What is code-based indexing? Indexing is how Cursor gets to know your project. It scans your files and creates a special map called embeddings of your code. This map helps Cursor understand how different parts of your code of your project are connected. When you ask a question or give a command, Cursor uses a map to find the most relevant code and provides smart, context-aware answers. It's what allows Cursor to have such a deep understanding of your entire code base. So here that matches quite nicely with what we've got here. 100% of the code base is indexed. Create a .cursorignore in the root of your project. So I'll just go down here and create a new file. .cursorignore. What's a cursorignore? Allows you to specify files and folders that you want to exclude from the context. Add the README to the .cursorignore. That will allow, to ignore that part of the repo. Cool. Okay. So if we head back into settings and we go and we can re-index the repo here. We'll see it's going to go through our entire code base and index all the files, hopefully paying attention to the fact that we specified README markdown in the thing. Okay, it didn't. How nice. Cursorignore. Did I spell that wrong? .cursorignore. Didn't. README.md. Have a README? We do. T indeed. I wonder if that's because I missed a I shouldn't have missed a slash. Okay, we can try do the node modulus now. Node module, sorry. It could already be in gitignore. No, it doesn't look like it. Node modulus is though, so we can get rid of that. So that's just going to make my life so nice because it's not going to work either. Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to close these. This is supposed to be at less than ignore files and ignore. Yeah, okay. It's supposed to go through and look here and be like, okay, yeah, these files are not supposed to be indexed anymore. So what I will do is I'll try it one more time, but I'm not quite so sure why that's not working. Interesting. Okay. Well, there's don't know why that's not. Why .cursorignore isn't picking up these files. It's at the root of the repo. I haven't put it in source or anything, have I? No. Interesting. Okay, cool. Why didn't the count change? By default, the cursor already ignores any files and folders hidden in your project gitignore file. Your project already has gitignore. You know, you didn't open it. You'll see the node module is already listed there. Yeah, but README isn't. in the chat, you can try referencing the ignored file. You will see that it's now blocked from cursor ignore. We can give that a go regardless. Yeah, so in this case, I think it might. No. Yeah, okay. Perhaps that index screen isn't updating correctly then, because clearly we can't index the README file. So I think that's just not updating correctly. So that's what happens when I yeah, README doesn't pop up there. Okay, interesting. Don't know why the indexing isn't popping up. Perhaps it is in the git ignore and I missed it. But we can see that the git ignore is working because it's not allowing me to index into the file there. Cool. Okay, so now remove it. We can do this. Save it and open the chat. And you can see there I can index it again. Strange, it's not updating in the indexing file, but hey. So dot cursor ignore versus dot cursor index ignore. What if you wanted to remove a file from the cursor index but still be able to reference it with the @ command in chat? Let's try using cursor index ignore instead of dot cursor ignore. Cool. So another file at the root of the repo called dot cursor indexing. I'll just copy it. Add readme to it. Cool, so settings. Go into indexing and docs. Just delete the index and compute it again. Hopefully this time it updates the correct number of files. We should also remove it from cursor ignore. I'll just do that. Oh, okay. So it's just syncing there. Looks like it's doing what it should be doing. So we can touch on here, extra for experts, what typically goes into each file while we wait for this to finish indexing. Hopefully it shows one less file. That's the goal. So extra for experts, what typically goes into each ignore file. Here's a quick guide on what to put in each ignore file. .git ignore. Use this for files you don't want in version control. So examples of like node modules like we did, or dist or build, or in files. So stuff you don't want to commit to the repo. Cursor ignore is stuff you want to hide from cursor. So it could be potentially in files you don't want to upload, or PNGs, like really large images. And cursor indexing ignore, use this to exclude files from the code base, index for better performance, while still allowing you to reference them when @ is needed. So that's large data directories like logs or archive of some sort. Cool. Okay, this is taking a little while, but we can just keep moving forward. .cursor ignore file screenshot. Okay. So I'll just take a screenshot of that. Yeah, good comment, Joel. Indexing node modulus module. I hope not. Cool. So this is cursor ignore. That would go crazy. Yes, it would. Getting there. Okay, so same problem. Clearly, I've set something up incorrectly, and that's on me. But it's supposed to say one less file than expected. Well, sorry, then the 102 you've got there. So, what's the difference between .cursorignore and .cursorindexIgnore? This Joel. .cursorignore hides ... while .cursorindexingIgnore only ... So .cursorignore just completely hides files entirely from cursor, while .cursorindexingIgnore only excludes files from the code base for code base index for better performance, only excludes files from the code base index for performance. How does managing cursor's context improve both performance and security? Managing context improves performance by ... and improves security by ... Performance by limiting the number of files the LLM is indexing, which is like understanding, and improve security by allowing you to limit the maybe specify the files the LLM has access to, i.e. hiding .env or similar. Cool. All right. So cleaning up our workspace is the step at the end where we go through and tidy up stuff that we might not need. So yeah, we can go through and set this up. Oh, sorry, go back and deset this up. Remove some stuff we don't need. Cool. So congratulations on completing the NextSound. Now that we've explored Cursor, you have the option to clean up the resources we created. Both the Cursor application and the NextSound repository are free to keep, and we'll keep using them in future projects in the series. However, if you'd like to tidy up your computer, here are a few steps to deleting each resource. The app is free for Cursor, but you need to pay if you're using Pro. So don't forget to manage your subscription if you've bought that to do this project. And so the NextSound files, the code is yours to keep. Experiment with it's open source. So I'll quickly go through and delete the repo, but I'll keep Cursor installed for future things in the series. Yeah, cool. So I think I installed it on my desktop. I suppose I can probably just walk through these and uninstall it afterwards. It's just a simple file on your desktop. In Windows, you can just, this is for uninstalling Cursor, sorry. But for deleting the project folder, just find the folder and delete the folder, empty your trash / recycling bin. So we can go through here. I wonder if Nextwork could partner with Cursor to provide an educational plan. That's a really good idea, Joel. But I heard that brought up in a meeting before. Just as like ideas, similar to the US exclusive university student free plan. Yeah, no, for sure. That's something we'd be very open to. If you knew anyone at Cursor that you could get us a contact, then for sure. Something to look into. Services I use were, so I'll say Cursor, IDE, and GitHub. The key concepts I learned included so indexing, so that's like extracting, limiting cursor's view from inside code base for security and speed reasons. I'll say performance reasons, as well as debugging and editing a existing web application. How long does the project take? Look at the live stream, actually, I'm not sure. Maybe an hour and a bit. Hour and 30 minutes. 1.5 hours. The most challenging part was, I'd say for me, the understanding cursors indexing and the file structures required for it. It will be most rewarding to, or it was most rewarding to, I'd say, see the updated queue feature for after fixes were rolled out by Cursors AI. Next to the project, I did this project today because I wanted to learn more about how to use an AI-powered IDE. This project met my goals by allowing me to experiment with adjusting and troubleshooting a basic web app using Cursor. Which is an AI-powered IDE. Cool. I think that's, just check all the tasks done. Oh, what's this? Oh, I didn't answer this. Okay, we can touch back on this. So I'll explain sort of the issue that we ran into. I ran into an issue where while the feature was implemented correctly without work without npm dev failing. Thank you, Amber. I appreciate that. I ran into an issue where while the feature was implemented correctly without npm run dev failing, there was a silent issue, a silent error. I solved this by telling Cursor the exact error I was running into. Cool. All right, that's the first project for the AI Workspace setup, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you stuck through, and if you followed along, that's really cool. Yeah, I'm happy to, if there's any questions at the end, I can answer them. Yeah, I appreciate you guys participating, if it's just commenting. Shout out to Joel for asking some really good questions. I appreciate you. Can we see your documentation? Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I can download some documentation for this project. My website there, nice. When did you get so good at streaming? My questions. I don't know, just natural born talent, I guess. Where do you subscribe? Subscribe button. Can you write a project on Stream and Go? Maybe if that's a fan favorite, we can definitely make that happen. Okay, saved. View this documentation in your portfolio. How nice. Project builder mini Spotify with cursor. Okay, this is my landing page, my website there. This is the screenshot we took. So introducing today's project, we go over what are we here to do today. One thing I didn't expect, how long the project took me. Environment setup, so setting up the development environment, which was cursor, in this case, the IDE. Used to be... Thanks for that, Joel. So we set up the environment, which was cursor, and then we talked about the main difference between something like that, which is directly derived from VS Code and cursor, or something directly derived from VS Code, which is cursor and VS Code, so a more traditional editor. And then we looked at exploring the app, understanding how it worked, what was already in place, and then went into adding a new feature, which was the queue here, which I think was quite cool when we demonstrated some cool troubleshooting stuff by looking into the browser console and giving that information to cursor with some subtle and concise prompts. We looked over commands, why commands are used, and the same for rules, why rules are used, and when they can, when they should be applied with that setting. Understanding and managing AI context with .cursorignore and cursor indexing ignore. Yeah, cool. That's that. I appreciate you guys for sticking with it. I'm going to end the live stream now, but yeah, so stoked.